welcome our viewing audience to another live streamed episode of the Same Difference podcast with Ja and
Missy, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
tonight we have a very special guest with us. We have one of the current U.S. Virgin Islands independent gubernatorial candidates on the show this evening. He's been a staple in VI government for quite some time. He served over 2 decades in the VI Police Department. He served on the 33rd Legislature. He's chaired and or vice chaired on multiple committees, including Health and Hospital Services. And he was on the ticket back in 2022, running for Lieutenant Governor alongside Kent Bernier back in 2022. Please welcome to the show, candidate Oakland Benta.
And good evening to the hostesses. Good evening. I'm very happy to be here with both of you this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. So, can you go ahead and I know I introduced you, but can you go ahead and let them know what's going on with you and why you're here this evening?
Good evening. Yes, my name is Oakland Benta, as the host introduced earlier, and I am a candidate vying for governor for the U.S. Virgin Islands in the 2026 general election. I come from a background of multiple facets. I was, of course, Senator of the U.S. Virgin Islands in the 33rd Legislature. I was the Chief of Police of the St. Croix District. I also was the Vice President of a telecommunication corporation, where my responsibilities hailed all over the world. And presently, I am an Operation Director under the U.S. Department of Justice. My background comes with many, many facets. And at the end of the day, my role within our community, even though I was separated from the legislature from the 33rd legislature, during that process, many things I mentioned on the floor of the legislature became criticized by other members of the 33rd legislature, insinuating to the public that the information I provided were erroneous, not true, and that it was crazy. Of course, I didn't make it in the other run for the 34th legislature because, of course, in the windows were at play, but it didn't stop me. It forced me to go further into really venturing into other atmosphere to bring to the reality of the facts of this territory based on what I presented in the 33rd legislature. And thereby, later on, I was adopted by the U.S. Department of Justice, and thereby I continued my saga into pushing forward with other investigative methods throughout the world and to bring our home, our pride, our joy back into some semblance of correction of the malfeasance and all the disabilities they provided to this territory by robbing our children, our seniors, and all that we've lost over the years based on things we could have avoided over the years. So I look forward to joining you and having a robust conversation. We are definitely going to have a good evening this evening.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we
Thank you.
are.
I like
Very
that. I like that. Now, we want to start it off. We want to jump right into it. We don't want to waste any of your time. Let's start it off with a softball question. Why, candidate Benta, why did you decide to run with your running mate, Mr. Potter? Why did you decide to run this time?
This time around, many things are really in the background that many people don't know about, nor does many of our own elected officials. And the warnings of which, as I mentioned, I presented over the years, we really don't know what's coming because, of course, the information is not forthcoming to this territory. And that is why I'm here. I realize that working with my partners and realizing that structure, integrity, morality, transparency, and also the fact that there along the way our government has failed to meet the deadlines of many of the requirements on the federal government side. And we have placed this territory in such a quagmire that in pushing forward from 2020 to today, in working in the atmosphere, I was preparing myself for today. Mr. Merwin Potter, a gentleman, a scholar, an individual who is a family man, individual who loves his country with all the morality within his vein, a churchgoer, ex-veteran, fireman, and public servant. It took some categories that I had to pretty much research myself to see that the person of whom I'm vetting was one that can stand the width of time. He can actually step forward and be placed in a position to serve and do well and do right more than anything else on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands. He is one with a character that many would never be able to step in his shoe. Despite so much that he has had to go on through, he said yes. If he did not say yes, I would assure the territory that this candidate would not have been running because he had to go through a serious vetting by many agencies before he could be confirmed to run with me. Yes, he did. Significant, rigorous background investigation and all that there is because I was making sure that the man who is a God-fearing person had all of the substance to stand within and weather the disgrace of criticisms that will befold him, but serve the people with fidelity. And that is why I selected my running mate. And that is why I decided to run because I saw and knew that tomorrow may be a day that this territory may find themselves on a federal receivership. I know for a fact that when I won this territory over the years, based on the Government Accountability Office, who was sending the subliminal messages to this territory, audit your accounts, provide the data, and actually start working on your tax study so that we could actually provide the right services to the people of this territory. This was a warning from 2019. The Government Accountability Office offered to states and territory $60 million that they would have hired the staff, rent the facilities, paid the staff. However, it would require that the government, through the Office of Management and Budget, Ms. Jennifer O'Neill, to institute and agree to have a chief statistician assigned once the VI government agreed, and the Office of Management and Budget never accepted the assistance. What the Government Accountability Office was going to do was that they were going to provide, like I said, a chief statistician, and the chief statistician would have actually have individual of all the mirrored agencies that we mirror under the federal government. For instance, if it's agriculture, it would be the chairman or representative of U.S. Department of Agriculture. If it is finance, it would be U.S. Treasury, and so forth. Our government said no to that. And what that created was a rift because we were so far behind with our audits that our federal funds for the disaster also became an issue. I won the territory. If we don't correct this, these federal funds that are badly needed in many households will be impacted. And I mentioned specificities. I mentioned the SNAP program. I mentioned the WIOA program. I mentioned the Section 8 program. And I just go on with so many more. And our government turned a blind eye. Yes, I was a crazy man who was talking about these things. But it was realized later on that I became that crazy man because there was a lot of people who, based on what they were receiving from those proceeds, didn't want to stop the bleeding because they were beneficiaries. And while our people think that it is just a skip and a hop for tomorrow, we're in serious trouble in this territory. And I say I sound the horn here for the first on this podcast, that while the government today, by way of VI Housing Finance Authority, where they thought they could whitewash the federal government and gave friends to property procurement these robust contracts, where individuals who bid fairly on contracts to the RFPs and bid lower on our experience, they gave another company, and I give an example. One bid was for 12 million, and the other company bid 50 million. Never had experience, never have they done the services before. Through the bidding process, the VI government awarded the bid to the company who has no history or experience, who bid 50 million, and the company that bid 12 million challenged it. The experience, the ability, capability. The bid was quashed, meaning it was stopped, removed, and reopened later. The same company that bid 12 million bid 12, but the company that bid 50 bid 9. And the company that bid 9, of course, they were awarded the contract. And the company that bid 12 challenged it again. See, these mishaps, as you will, became notably recognized throughout the proceedings of the RFPs within the Virgin Islands and heavily investigated. I don't know if you've heard that the AG or the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, Gordon Ria, and its hearing with it before the Senate, said that there are some investigations pertaining to public officials, and that within a certain time, certain things will be done. This is much more than just few public officials. That's one side of the coin that the VI Attorney General, who is partnering with the US Department of Justice, is handling. But there are other parts to this. There are other facts to this and other implications to this that goes not just to last year or 3 years or 5 years ago. This is now a clean house going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Candidate Benta. We have quite a few questions for you and even questions that we received beforehand. So we wanna keep this thing rolling. I'm gonna let Nisi ask hers and then I'm gonna go after. Nisi, what do you have?
Sure. So you mentioned a lot about why you were running in terms of integrity and wanting to be transparent and some of the issues that are coming in the pipeline that could definitely affect us in the long run. What one particular item can you discuss with us right now that, if successful with you and your Potter team, that that you will make tangible, that the people can see and know that this change has happened to improve our circumstances?
Let's start with what the elephant in the room, WAPA. Let's start with that one first.
Ooh, that's a good one.
WAPA, as I have done, where I brought agencies to this territory to sit with the executive branch of this territory and members of the legislature, were offered up because we had things so messed up, a floating power ship for the territory, one for St. Croix and one for the District of St. Thomas and St. John. The floating power ships, they would furnish their own fuel and oil. The only thing that would happen is that it would require that a positioning for the ship to be placed in place would be a month, and they would emit power or remit power to the VI government at 6 cents a kilowatt hour from ship to shore. Our government said no. But the agencies are still in standby for the services so badly needed. Right now, based on what we're paying, is some 60 plus cents a kilowatt hour. The government is subsidizing, they said, about 5 million a month for the population. We're still paying some 40 plus cents a kilowatt hour. That is ludicrous. However, as you have experienced, everyone have experienced over time, the power outages and so forth, that's conserving fuel while you're in rotation. And in some instances, you can't pay for the fuel. So that would be a priority number one for me. The other thing is our healthcare in this territory. I brought doctors to our shores to build 3 state-of-the-art hospitals here in this territory. Each one of them second to none. In other words, none better than the other. It would also include the segment for our veterans. It was also going to include for mental health and all the other trimmings that we needed. And what was going to happen with that was the doctors who were here on our shore, who sat and met with the governor, along with members of the 33rd Legislature, and explaining how they intend to go about it, where they were going to finance it themselves. And these are entities of which they would have to pay the federal government a lot of money that they earn over the years, and they didn't want to do that. They're what they call humanitarian processes. Our government members of the Senate, as well as the governor, in explaining that what they would have done was all of our children who wants to go into the medical clinician, they would have created a curriculum at our university, pay for those children to attend free at no cost. This would not be a FAFSA document that I had to fill out and then be charged later on. And the children who wants to go on to become the physicians with a special skill set in certain areas, they would have taken them to Louisiana State University to further their education at no cost to the government of the Virgin Islands. The catch to this would have been that once they graduate, that they would have to come back to the US Virgin Islands and work within that facility for at least 5 years. 20 years into the program, the entity that started and founded it they would step out and allow for the VI government 100% to run that facility. Our government said no. And I could go much further, but I know there are other questions that you have, so I don't want to eat up the time like that. So those are some of the things that I brought to the table, and the government said no. And we'll get deeper with others as we go further.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Now, as we know, the USVI school year just started, literally just started. Seemingly every school year, it appears that it was a surprise to school maintenance what needed to be done over the summer. Every new school year, including this one, there are schools with damage, mold, uncleaned, missing supplies, etc. Just today, a couple hours ago, actually, VIDE put out a statement regarding a fridge or fridges that are unable to keep the food to temperature. That's just today. So as governor, what would you do to end this cycle?
Well, I'd say to you, when individuals think that they can fool the populace by pretending to do what they're supposed to do, in other words, they've been hiding a certain fraction of this as well. Let's talk about the contractors as well, who was part of this construction. And it was a bill and moved straight into the facility at the same time. The problem with this is everybody's trying to save the pennies so that others will walk away with more rather than what should be applied to the contracts. And as governor, more than anything else, you and I know with the smarter balanced scores that our children have been graduating where we're below the standards, they graduated at 9 or 10 grade level, right? So we'll go to the education side of it, and then I'll deal with the facility side of it. With the teachers themselves who've been trying so hard to get what's right for them to teach our students, they're not getting it, so they just work with what they have. Some teachers purchase the items themselves to teach. And we say that we have all the what we require to actually educate our children. What has happened with these freezers, individuals, and many other supplies? You can hear about it later on, where I told them they will never be ready for what the plan is. Because when you look at what our flood zones are, for instance, we had the Arthur Richards schools, as you guys know, and they said it's in a flood zone. And so thereby, the school could not be erected in that area. Cluttermark is not too far away as well. And then, of course, we have the other services in the town area as well, flood zones. But many use that and capitalize a process that's streamlined that says a building that should have been less than 200 million, they created a new formula where FEMA is looking at what it really costs based on other projects the federal government has done. We didn't patent anything that the federal government already has and approved. We went out and create our own architectural and engineering from scratch to say that we're doing something, and we've inflated the numbers. And then we bought equipment that are not to standards and properly vetted by the federal government. So there's going to be some other investigations or other investigation to that sort of behavior. But what it says to our people in the territory, though, and over we've heard, not just today, the same thing over and over every school year. There's something that's not working, or for some reason they can't start on time. And yes, they said, but we're ready. We hear that every single time, that we're ready. And when the children return to these facilities, there is when the skeletons are revealed. It is an abomination, but there's also corruption, which is a part of it that you guys are going to learn pretty fast soon, that the funding that we're talking about, when you look at the PWs which were provided, there are pencils in the PW that cost $100. How is it that a pencil costs $100 in a federal PW? How is that? So the third-party fiduciary accounting agency, with everything that moves to this Virgin Islands, there's a third-party fiduciary agency outside this territory that looks at these contracts and these bids and everything that's taking place with our funds. And that now brings us to the other side of the spectrum, where we have the issue on the VI Housing Finance Authority. See, we're looking at what's happening with us being revealed now, but what has been determined before school opened were all of what you're seeing happening today and more to come. I would change that immediately, because the federal government and our children and our parents deserve better. and we can make it better because the federal government is standing at the door right now, willing to assist in so many ways, but we can't have the same old uh, individual in positions that's doing things. Of course, yeah, I'm saying today, several of them are under investigation, and several of them will be indicted. Unfortunately, the hard answer sometimes is the one that scares people. But the fact remains is that when you disenfranchise your own and someone don't take the bull by the horn, then we all riding the same donkey down the road and closing our eyes and closing our ears. Those days are done.
True.
So
So
just to piggyback, Ja, real quickly. So are you against holding those individuals accountable to the point of termination if necessary for these types of repetitive patterns under your administration?
I'm at the position not only holding them accountable, but where justice is applicable, apply it as well.
okay. Yeah, because that was another question that came up in the chat. Would you, and I guess how would you hold your employees accountable? Because it seems to be a lack of that for a while now.
Yes.
All right. My next question is referring to the Southland gaming situation. Honestly, coming in as governor, right? There is a whole there's a plethora of problems. So you have a lot to deal with coming in as governor. One of which, the Southland Gaming horse track deal on St. Croix has been a hotly contested issue. What would you do to end this disagreement over contracts, VLTs, and a possible gaming monopoly in the territory, and bring back horse racing on St. Croix? The horseman, them, they want their horse racing. What are you gonna do?
Well, let us talk about the real elephant in the room again.
Okay.
The whole thing with the casino side of it, which was created through legislation to have casinos built on the island of St. Croix. I don't know if you guys remember this. And that whole bill was broken down in so many different ways that we speak about Southland Gaming, but we're not speaking about VIGL. And VIGL is another aspect of who they were as individuals in the seat to do all that you see now. That now I see Southland Gaming has stepped up to the plate along with the horsemen of St. Croix who have agreed with Southland Gaming. And while we look at VIGL and what did not happen, why VIGL was in control of it, and now the horsemen themselves, in looking at what's been proposed to them, other than what was said to them over the years, the horsemen have taken a position. And with it, the legislature of the Virgin Islands are now fighting what they have also amended for VIGL. So the issue is diversification of an economy is very important. However, if we are diversifying an economy and we just living in a structure in one direction because it's one entity of which others choose first, that entity was afforded every dilution of that law was dealt with a casino operation on the Virgin Islands, specifically in the District of St. Croix. That law was diluted so much. From having a convention center to holding X amount of people, from building a hotel, not repairing an existing hotel, building a brand new hotel. Instead, we changed it, water it down so that they could refurbish hotels and say that these are the rooms other than what the bill was intended for. And I don't see anything different with the VIGL side of it was first, and now the Southland Gaming. It's just that the horsemen, who I respect, are now leveling the playing field to make sure that they get their industry back into what they've been pushing for several years, caring for the horses, buying the supplies, vet services, and this is St. Croix now, and still nothing today. I could remember where they moved to Williams Delight in an area where they're having these races, and members of the legislature created a storm with the owners of the property and said that you will be sued if you continue to allow these individuals to have horse racing in this specific area. But the truth be told, that the individuals or the senators that cried wolf were individuals who were working very close to VIGL. So the monopoly of the conspiracy of the games that we play with the innocent, which were the horsemen who really wants the industry, where they were fooled in so many ways that we were working on their behalf and really truly wasn't so. So I'll have to sit and look deeper as I've spoken to several of the horsemen. I've sat and spoken with the individual who's in charge of the horsemen and many of the other people, the stewards, who wants to be a part of this as well. And they see an up for them because they are the one that made the proposal to start land gaming. I understand. So we'll look at it a lot deeper.
Have you gotten a chance to look at the current proposal?
I have.
Are you for it or against it?
I am for economic growth, and I'm definitely for championing anything that we can make sense of. It would require some amendments and adjustments, of course, but it
Quincy?
must be, yes, it will require some amendments and adjustment. But it's a way forward for the horsemen who are the ones who have decided that this is what they want.
Okay. Do you have one in mind in particular? Can you give us a for instance of an amendment you want to put in or would like to?
Well, what has happened over the years is the law has been diluted, like I said. I would put back that we go back to the original clause of the law and make sure that the Senko in particular get all of what was removed to satisfy one end and bring it to this end now to see if they would be amenable to building the convention center and building a brand new hotel and making it so that the moratorium on the casino side is relived on the island of St. Croix, which, as you can see, is really no real casino per se, besides the one we have now, which is DV, which is not attached to the hotel like it should be,
Yeah.
but what it was intended for to make sure that the law comes back to light.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Nisi?
So as you're aware, there are a lot of closed and abandoned schools, more so on St. Croix than St. Thomas, some under contract for being rebuilt, others with no plan in sight. What plan does your Benta Potter team has to repurpose, if possible, some of these buildings, and also ways that you can reduce your leases that you have for your government agencies for properties that does not fall under the government of the Virgin Islands?
Thank you. The VI government through friendship for decades. We're in a lot of facilities or buildings that belong to friends who pledged during the campaign, provided services to funding for campaigns, and many other things that's taking place. I believe in big centralizing government operation and building a government complex. Get out of the bleeding. Let's go to the buildings that belong to the government. That they're solid and they're strong. They weather so many storms and still standing. New homes built, the storms destroyed them, as you've seen. That we refurbish those buildings and use them for centers or other government amenable functions. I'm for that. Now, when you look at what has happened over the years with our schools in particular, and schools are what we call placed in districts, and we start to look at what has happened over the years, we've had a serious exodus out of the story with family. A lot of children who have left after the storms, and even before, many families realize that the children are getting the best pound for pound for the buck of what they would expect from the government, and they left. The districting issue, based on what has now created some of what we see, we have elementary, junior high, and maybe high school in one complex, where you have children who are elementary now entertaining in the language of the high school students, and we have forgotten that these are transcending into a issue when it comes to society and how our children learn and what they learn because they're advanced before they should be. I believe that those facilities need to be reopened. One of the things that we have done, because we didn't think properly, our government, because we don't have the resources, and not that we don't have the ability, is that we don't have the resources to stand on our own feet and run our own government a certain way. Less of the federal subsidies and more of our own because of our agencies as far as our private sector. That here it is, we are placed in pushing, because of federal funds, out of sectoring in our school districts. We have now engulfed ourselves to fill a building. They're saying there's only X amount of students in district and classroom. We don't have 20 or 30 in a classroom anymore. So there's no need for these facilities. And so we decided to merge sectors into one complex and create issues for us. I would reopen those sectors. We would have the funding to do it on our own to make sure that the sectors exist. Some parents live in the sector. And because of where they live, they're saying to them that because you're here, your child can't go there. I'm one who believes that where the parent works and is amenable to them, that we can also move those children to those areas or schools closer to the parents. Because I'm one who's going to hold the parents accountable for not showing up at the PTAs and picking up the report cards. The 2 hours may be good for some to get to school, but what time do you have when you drive from Christiansted to Frederiksted to sit with your teachers or the teachers of your children? Not much. Things that make it a lot more easier and making sure that those children, wherever the parents work, can really get their children to those facilities as well.
So just to piggyback, so I'm okay with the consolidation of the schools because the population has diminished. But can we not, is your team thinking of repurposing these abandoned schools for government use for other things? There's lots of storage facilities that's being leased out. There's a lot of offices that don't necessarily serve the public that these buildings can possibly be revamped to use. Are these things that is on your agenda that you guys are looking into and how it can be possible?
But it is possible because we're using one as a lumber yard right now. So it is possible that we can repurpose it for government functionalities. And that's pretty much what I was saying, that we are going to use our government facilities, refurbish them, and use them as needed for what we need them for. But some of it with our daycares that you've seen or heard, where even those in daycare have had issues with getting the funding for the daycares. And then the daycares now, in most instances, a lot of it became private property, private homes, where some people have these programs because the government itself, because they haven't been refurbishing these buildings or using them like they should, individuals saw a business opportunity and have these daycares at home where we should have them under our purview, making sure that the funding that exists gets to those facilities. And that is in fact what's going to happen. We're going to refurbish those buildings. It can be multifaceted, but it can be used for government services as needed.
I heard a lot about, the government facilities and I guess commercial properties. Is there any type of plan to get people back into homes also? Because there are a lot of abandoned homes, especially like in Christiansted and Frederiksted Town. Is there any plan to repopulate, restructure, anything, those?
A few years ago, let's talk about the towns. I brought some investors who were willing to partner with the owners of those homes before we pushed to what you call conservatorship. And a lot of those properties in town area are what you call historical buildings. And with the historical buildings, based on the requirement, it is much more expensive to build than if you build a home from scratch outside of the town area, the boundaries. So I brought in a company who understand how this works. They would create the model for the families to come together, create a company, an organization of their own, that they would be partners with this company who will refurbish the buildings, rent the facilities, run the business for a while, not the conservatorship. And after a certain amount of years that the company who is working with the families, who provide the dividends to the family, make back their money, then the entire operation of the business is turned over to the family. The conservatorship of which we were trying to push would have placed the family in an awkward position that they would have had to now, if the investor put in 2 million, they would have to come behind and find what are the 2 million. And if you look at the years that rolled by and then they started to do different things, then those families who couldn't even pay the property tax would have to come up with that amount, not with the investors they bought. It is at a moratorium at a certain point, whether it's the earning that earn back the money within a certain time or 20 years. And then the property is turned back to the family. They would ask that the family though, not evict or quash the businesses they have created and make it a fundamental for the family to continue to earn. While they're running the business, like I said, there's dividends. Whatever they make, the family gets a percentage. Not that they're sitting there for X amount of years and they'll get anything. So yes to the question, homes outside the outskirts. We should move from the housing community as far as layers, floors upon each other. I believe in what can work within our territory, that we have plots that we could create for individuals to have their own homestead, and so that they have their own ability to have a house and a home that later on they will own. And these are part of where, to the VI Housing Finance Authority, as you can see, a lot of our housing complexes are managed by private companies, not housing authority anymore. It's under another chapter. And the question is why we went that way for government structures rather than allowing it to stay under housing authority. Also under housing authority, the funding for some of the homes for people who got properties and so forth, the government land, that housing authority used to build these homes. We got Paradise, so we got Strawberry, we got Williams and Light, we have Campo Rico. So these are under housing authority. What has removed that fabric of the single home for family? And then we go out into to condominiums style where there's 3 floors, 4 floors, 9 floors, whatever floors they have, with multiple layers of so many people on each other rather than going to a single family unit that they can own a home. And that's the trick. Own your home at a price equivalent to your salary. Not what we had where we said that we were going to provide to one of the programs on the Housing Finance Authority, where if you're not making a St. Croix, no, if you're not making 41,000 St. Croix, you don't qualify for it. And in St. Thomas, if you're not making 45,000, you don't qualify. And in St. John, if you're not making 47, that's a part of the SLICE program. If you're not making 47,000, you don't qualify. But it's a government-run program. We made the ability to reach that quota so high so that no one in government at the 35,000 now can actually be a beneficiary. Those nonsense are over. That will be changed.
We have a follow-up question in the chat, but first, before I even ask it, how fleshed out is that plan? Because I don't want to ask this question and then it's like this is a concept that we will, after we get in,
No, it's fleshed out. Let me go back to, I started a little early and I didn't explain. For the past several years, I've been working with my federal partners. And everything I'm saying here to you tonight is what will happen within 3 months, not 6 and 10 months. We've been researching and going through and evaluating over the years what are the vexing issues. And besides bringing the issues to the forefront and trying to educate our people, I moved to the other chapter, which is now to find a solution with my federal partners and what we can do, and in private investors, what can be done. And assure this is not 6 months. Some of it is not even 2 months. WAPA is not 2 months. The ship has to be positioned within a month, and thereby we start right away. Our hospitals and so forth, if we can't get our act together, then the same fraction of individuals of whom were here before, they're ready to build a hospital in less than 18 months. This is not rocket science. We are moving towards what you call smart cities. And we'll have that other conversation later on as we get into the smart city discussion.
Thanks.
So like I said, this is just months, not 6, not a year, not 2 years. That's nonsense. Because we've been in this for how long, and you hear the same thing as you go around, they're going to do this within X amount of time. They have to research, they have to see when they get in. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. Because if you're looking at government is continuous. It doesn't start because a new body comes in. It's been in existence for years, saying the same thing, looking for the same formula. We're done with that. The formula is had.
Agreed. Thank you. Question in the chat. Well, JC Carrillo asks, what assurance does this conservatorship offer? If the heir of the estate in the agreement defaults, who gets ownership?
When you refer to the conservatorship, you're referring to the one which came out under the federal program. Is this the one you're referring to, or the one I'm speaking about as far as the dividend incorporation for someone assisting the homeowners or the property owners as partners? Which one?
That one.
Okay.
The latter, yes.
Okay, so the other one is that the family would have a corporation, and in the corporation, which the family members, if one deceased, someone that steps up as president or chairman or whatever have you, and it continues, so no one loses.
Okay, and JC Carrillo also asks, question for Benta on the housing proposal. What do you propose for historical estates? I'm glad they asked this because Whim Plantation comes to mind all the time for me. So is there any room for historical estates?
Yes, there is. And that is where the dividend side of it comes in. But here's the other catch 29 to this. We speak about historical, but we destroy the government, destroy historical sites, historical buildings. But it's okay for that to happen. But if you're a owner of a property that they have deemed to be a historical site by members of a board who come around and say, well, your house is a historical house, then it place you in financial burden. If we're going to dictate and assign and say that a home is historical, it is a government responsibility to deem it historical, to preserve it by assisting those families to renovate it financially.
Okay. Nisi, you're up.
So one of the big, well, there's many big issues in our territory, but another one of our big issue has to be maintenance. Maintenance of the government, of its properties that they consider of great value it has to be somehow studied. One of the things that's pending right now is the building of the medical facility for our homeless and our mentally challenged. That isn't built because there's no additional funding to maintain after it's built. What does your team plan to do about the lack of maintenance that happens throughout the government and to streamline the process better to make it more efficient?
Thank you. And very good question. We did it before. What has changed? Individuals saw an opportunity to privatize a lot of the services. And so the services they provide is outside contracts based on what they submit to be paid. Somebody gets a cut out of that. But before, as you know, our school had its own maintenance staff. And every entity of this government had someone that was in maintenance along the way. We removed those and we contract everything out to private contractors. That we will go back to appointing our in-house servicing, maintenance at all of our facilities like it was before. You know, reinventing no wheel here. We're cutting the fat away. We're getting rid of that nonsense. Because if you're in a position in government, you're hired or elected to serve in a position, the position pays you. And that's your salary. Not the individuals that they've been contracting to do this work now have to pay you a percentage. We're done with that. We're bringing it back home. We're going to train from our education system through our vocab side of it. And we're going to get those individuals, young men and women who love the trades, to get in and be those individuals who we will get back into doing those services based on what they have been trained in by our own teachers in serving our community. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to take it back to what worked. We got to what don't work now. That's what we did. We removed, as you guys went to school in the VI, you know who were the maintenance person in the school that you went to. You know who were the custodian workers. You know these people. But all of a sudden, they don't exist anymore. We create an entity or entities in the government, but really and truly the entities we create in the government contracts. Not hire an individual, they find contractors to do the work. Where we have individuals based on our government pension side of it, the GERS, that nobody's talking about. With every section of it that we remove part of what government is responsible for, and remove the employees, there's somewhere down the line that a lot of retirees can find themselves without a pension. We got to change that mindset. So that's what I'm going to do. Bring back what worked back into place, starting within our education system, bringing our young souls into those areas that they can fill those voids, provide the niches that we need, whether it's IT, whatever is required. We're going to provide the niche that we don't have to go outside to bring people in, that these people remain as government employees.
I have a quick follow-up to that. Are you against or oppose creating a centralized Department of Maintenance to oversee all of the government's issues so that you have one process of streamlining all the information in, to have some sort of traceability, accountability, and progressional pattern that you can track to say things are improving or being done? I know the Department of Education separated them for education. I'm talking about which is not really working, as we can tell right now. But are you opposed or against maybe just creating an entity over the entire government that all of that comes into that central place, and those workers are then dispatched from there to these different jobs daily to accomplish these tasks?
Oh, I'm definitely in agreement with you, because we did under Public Works. Public Work had a lot of different responsibilities at one point. We've removed segments of public work and diluted to something else. And we're going to bring that right back to what worked. We're going to staff up. Yes, the schools will have the person who is pretty much the front line, but some of it is heavy lifting and will need the help. And some of it goes into even the housing authority that can also assist in some of those areas as well. So that, yes, I am going to make sure that the government has the availability and capability within the agencies we have to fill the void rather than going in the other direction.
Just to sum up, to make sure that I'm following and whoever else is watching, our audience is following. So are you saying that you would get rid of the outside contractors, and not only that, you would also streamline it to where we would have training programs for younger individuals to train them up in the trades and all, and in those places like IT and whatnot that they need, and then put them in a centralized location and dispatch them to whichever government department needs to deal with the maintenance? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly what I'm saying. We have the curriculum at our school that we were so much bragging about, that we actually engage in training our young men and women in these fields. We have the WIOA program. I don't know if you're familiar with the WIOA program, where we have individuals that go to the Department of Labor looking for work and they say we don't have any jobs. And that program is structured a way that any individual walking through those doors, you don't say we don't have a job. We appoint them to somebody to do an understudy and the training under. If they're viable, that we can work with them, we make sure we get them on the SNAP program, we get them on the Section 8 program, and the individuals they're working with based on where they're assigned to, they get a stipend, plus the assistance of the government, not the corners, not the streets, that they're in some functional agency learning. Even if they don't have the skill set, they will learn it under the WIRO program. And from there, once the positions become available under the WIRO program, then they are placed in the program as what they applied for originally as an employee. We don't apply these things, and these programs exist federally, but nobody speaks about it because nobody wants to touch certain things. And we're going to change that to make sure that no child is really not left behind.
Nice. I like that. Another question from the chat. Question for Benta. How will you handle all the contractors who are GVI employees holding LLCs, INCs, and sole proprietorships? Will these contracts be investigated and project contracts and process completed and monies used for those purposes?
Yes. Straight out, yes. See, the thing is that as government employees, no, there's nothing wrong with having a business. Nothing at all. They can have a business and do what they want to do, but they're going to do what's required by law under the statute, and the VI government is going to follow the law under the statute and stop watering down the requirement as is required to make sure that the right services are provided and that these change orders that comes with these contracts. You look at it very carefully. Look at all the change orders that has been taking place with just about every single one of those contracts. And I'm not diluting it. That's about every single one. The question is why? And who are the individuals who are vetting these contracts or preparing the RFPs for the contracts not to know better? And then in the middle of the stream, a change order is derived by who? And then is signed off on by who and why? Those are bleedings that we are going to stop in this government. I'm not beating the private sector as far as individuals who want to work. There's a lot of jobs that will be available based on when we get there. But what has been done to the VI government, where we say the VI government is strapped for cash, or we're find ourselves in a place where we don't have the funds to make sure that there are books in the classroom. How do these things happen? We keep reprogramming funds from one to the other, Peter to pay Paul, when in fact, we know what Peter is doing intentionally so Paul can benefit. We're going to change that so that make sure the benefit gets to the general population like it should be.
Thank you. Thank you. There's your answer, JC Carrillo. And this question, I'll try to keep it as straightforward as possible. The USVI governor is one of the highest paid governors in the nation and among the territories. Yet, it seems as if the executive branch hasn't executed much to improve living conditions. Our current governor requested a raise, which was denied. Would you get in and try to give yourself a raise?
I'll say, as a senator in the 33rd legislature, I was preempted by then Senator Javon James, where my bill would have rolled the senator's salary back to 65,000. A governor's salary, one of the highest, when you look at per capita, how many people we're talking about serving in comparison to California, New York, and so forth, and what look at the numbers we're looking at. For me, for me, I would roll it right back to the basic of what it should be of 85,000. And this is what I would do. I would roll, I would move. I would move and send special legislation to the legislature to roll the salary for the governor back to $85,000.
So you are you would be willing to take a pay cut, is what you're saying.
Right now, I'm working on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands, and I don't get paid. No, you heard they said that I'm a director at a certain area with the U.S. Department of Justice.
Yes.
I waived the salary. Okay?
Wow.
I waived the salary. So for me, this is not about money, because you see, I have children too. And most of everybody who's listening have children as well. We live in a community, we've seen what has happened to our seniors. We live in a community where the fight for a raise became more permanent than taking care of our seniors, our young souls in this territory. They forgot them, they didn't exist. And the argument left those individuals who work so hard in government every single day to go to work, to serve what they can at the best that they can, and the government ain't fighting for them. We have the unions fighting for so many different things for so many years and still can't get it. We have our teachers who are highly disrespected, our law enforcement who are highly disrespected. And it goes on, the disrespect goes on where there are funds available, but because we have misappropriated these funds, you create a lack of the functionality of the agencies where a lot of our people leave our shores and go elsewhere to work. Those days are done.
Another question from the chat. If elected, what or where will you look for a new USVI Attorney General?
I'll say that I will be one of those who will push for our delegate through our legislature, special order that is, that they will allow for that position to be an elected position. And it will come with several requirements. See, our Attorney General today, unfortunately, they had work at the behest of the chief executor of this territory. They don't work for themselves as far as service on what's required by law is what is told to them. No matter what you say, if the governor calls, they're going to move mountains to satisfy what the governor asks them to do. And with that, when we look at our judiciary as well, a lot of our judiciary are assigned or by the governor of the Virgin Islands. I would be a board assigned and remove the politics side of it when it comes to certain functionalities of the three branches of government. That should be clean and clear, that every side of it have a balance, that no one is held as a slave, or the family members who are employed in government become abused and they use them as a ploy so that they can get certain things passed or done. Those things are over with. We've seen it over and over. Families are afraid to speak up. People are afraid to step forward and do what's right. People are afraid to really show that they are upstanding citizens because they know that their words or voices will be uttered in a way that they'll be penalized, punished, or fired. Those days are done.
Nisi? Good
One
question.
one of our big setbacks for our seniors and just our lower income community as a whole is transportation. The Taxi Cab Commission has had a chokehold on our territory for some time now. We do understand that that is a very aging population. So having public transport outside of Vitron is not practically non-existent during the daytime. And as well as their ability to hinder us from having any type of Uber or Lyft services or some version of that for our own territory to some degree. How would you address this issue if you win the ticket come November?
Lonesome Dove. Have you ever heard of Lonesome Dove?
No.
The Virgin Islands owns several oil wells throughout the United States. We own oil wells. And the Lonesome Dove bill is structured in a way where the legislature have moved these funds in another direction other than what it was intended for. In the low summed up bill, whatever the oil wells earned, the first portion of it would go to human services for transportation for our seniors. Are you guys aware of that?
No,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. Research it, lonesome dove. The question is, and very good and adequately presented, it is not that we don't have the capability through our Vitran services, is that we have not provided the data. We have not audited our financials and submitted them to the Government Accountability Office. We have not provided the audit, even on our single audits that would help for us to have the funds to make sure these transportation lines are in place. Our government is negligent in so many areas that people are not really familiar with it. The single audits, we have not provided the information. The single audits work where once you spend over $750,000 in some of the funding for certain agencies, you must provide a single audit. We haven't done that on those numbers that you have spent over the 750,000. Through the lonesome dove, the monies that's been coming in through that, which went now from, it was in the GRS, it was moved now to the Public Finance Authority. Things that has happened that changed so secretly, where we're not in an issue where we don't have money in this territory yet. There's a lot of the fat we got to cut off to make sure that the lean meat get to the people. And that's what's going to happen. This territory is rich. It's rich. So research lonesome dove. Don't just take my word for it. When everything I present to you, you just look at it and you see, fact check what I'm saying. That we have definitely missed the bus on that.
I have to look into it because I was trying to look at it just now and the show came up. So I'll look a little later, but thank you for clearing that up. And my next question, there has been a rash of robberies on island, including the Christian Said Business District. Small business owners and residents alike are scared and frustrated. What would you do to bring this to an end?
As a chief of police, as I was, I made sure, and I'm explaining to those who follow, because I trained a lot of these individuals, because I was also the training director of the police department, that there are a lot of the individuals who are committing these offenses. It's 10 o'clock, where's your child? Those are things that we've forgotten over the years. Nobody's paying attention. Individuals are released and they're on home arrest, where they have a bracelet and whatever how should be at home. Who's really monitoring to make sure that they're home? Because I've seen them up and down the street and they're jamming more than anybody else on the street with bracelet on the foot. The individuals, once they're being released from jail, that the Bureau of Correction or the Parole Board must provide certain information to not just members of the community, but also to the police department. They are not working together. As chief of police, I brought everybody into one room. I spent time in our prisons and I spoke to the inmates. I went to the homes of those individuals who were supposed to be at home and make sure they're at home, and I sit with those who are responsible for them and make sure we have a discussion. I made sure that each and every one of all who should be accounted for were accounted for as chief of police. The police department will tell you that. And yes, there were, when I was brought back, there was significant homicide. But I can assure you, within short order, the street was a peach. The neighborhoods were peach. One of the issues were, as I started as chief, they shut up a police car. This is in the Estate Grove place. And as chief then, where these guys have never seen anything like this, I shut down the entire Grove place. I called every single law enforcement, Leo, officers who are working in other areas, casino, court, wherever, bring everybody together. You shoot up a police car. When it's somebody's house to hide, I said I'm gonna get search warrant for every single one of those apartments. I know I'm gonna find guns, I'm gonna find drugs and other things as well. And what we find, we're gonna deal with those who live in those homes. The individual jump out the back door because the people say, you don't get the hell out of our property because you're heating up our place. We caught him. But what I'm saying is policing is strategy and technique. Community service. The community service and awareness by bringing the people to you to make sure that people understand you, what you stand for, and work with you. That they will provide information that many will be afraid to provide. On scenes where individuals just kill someone, my phone is ringing. On Mario's show, I'm on the radio speaking to the people on the radio saying we have XYZ going on right now in this area, saying you're home. However, this is what's happening. The people in the neighborhood start making phone calls and we apprehended. And this is how the community is left out of what should be what you call COP, the community-oriented policing, to bring them in with you. We ain't saying that we're going to have people out there to become individuals who are just snitches, because people call them snitches. But we're talking about individuals who are upstanding and see the value, because what you bring into a neighborhood, you bring it to the children as well. You never know what bullet is for who. They don't have an eye or name or direction. They just fly in any direction. Whoever gets it, gets it. Stopping the bleeding, though, when it comes to crime, is not hard. It is an effort that you must have an utmost love for your community to do it. Don't just sit in a position because it looks good in a white shirt and so forth, or whatever have you. We have good police in this territory, I must say, but the hands are tied. Well, we have the hierarchies of the police department and many other things are coming down again with the police department. But the hierarchy of the police department, who in some instances are straddling the fence themselves, you have officers know better. And they're going to sit and wait because they know what they're doing as far as what the leadership is doing, and not going to stand for it. But bringing community-oriented police back to our neighborhood and bringing the programs which I brought the FBI into the U.S. Virgin Islands, and they were willing to start up those. You've seen them. There's community centers in each of these neighborhoods. We open them with programs. And to date, would you believe that those places are still closed because the government of the Virgin Islands would not move to allow for the FBI to work with them to open these programs? We had the Defy and we had the DARE programs. Those are okay, but when you hear the FBI, you're worried about all these other things. When you're talking about curtailing crimes, you got to be aggressive. You got to understand the street, and you got to take the bold step forward and do what's right, because there's opportunities for our children to live rather than die.
I want to follow up really quickly because the next question I have falls in line, and there's a question in the chat that falls in line with this as well. As of today, St. Croix has had 18 homicides, including a former member of the current Lieutenant Governor's security team, a police officer at that, in front of his home, and another near the Superior Courthouse. St. Thomas has had 13, bringing the territory total to 31. As a former St. Croix Police Chief, what would you do as governor to decrease these numbers and protect residents of the territory, including those in government positions?
Today, most of these homicides, correlates with each other. No one is looking at the program that exists. We don't have MS-13, but we do have gangs. But we have a lot of retaliation. And the build-up on the street, you would hear that is going to happen. No one is intervening in making sure it doesn't happen. No one is following the trend as far as who is who. It is easy to track the players. Some of them are one of the same. So what's going on here with this case is you have one from a case that happened years ago. One brother got killed, one brother in jail comes out. Next thing, the person who was a part of killing that one person, that person is killed. And then here comes the retaliation. And it goes on, and no one has intervened in that. This is not just rocket science, gentlemen and lady. It is going to the crust of it, making sure that you become the front line of it, because that's what police department does, supposed to do. And then, of course, you have the social atmosphere where our agencies are not working together. Human services, because there's some issues within homes that require certain services. We had truancy officers. Now we have, I think they call them counselors now. They don't call them truancy anymore, right? That through the truancy program, I created a unit within the police department with an officer assigned to the Department of Education, not School Security Bureau. They have their mission statement. But to the truancy program, there was an officer assigned to work with the truant officer, that if a child is not at school, they go to the home or the house of the child with a counselor. Where's your child? Why he or she's not in school? And the things you find out that terminate and move forward and create a lot of issues. Over the years, though, a lot of people don't remember this, because some of it, based on what we see on our street, we've had a lot of what you call crack babies, not my terminology, medically, crack babies. And a lot of those crack babies, we have pushed them aside because they won't function in the schools, and they found other ventures in the street to keep them occupied. There's issues there. And we neglected to continue making sure we provide certain services. And out of that, you have some of those issues that permeate, that creates a lot of the spin-off of what we're having. How would I have would curtail? I did it before. The homicides in our street, I did it before. I did it before by having all of the agencies working along with, but I spearheaded along with a judge of the Superior Court, moving forward and addressing certain things. Because this thing about patting you on your wrist until you go home and then it's okay can't work with me. Because all that is that you're fostering because the person within the neighborhood, they're in the street. They dictate what they should do. The communication within the jails, I can tell you, the correction officer will tell you. I stayed in the jail for weeks and sat with those individuals and we spoke. And they are very versed in how things are and what needs to be done. They work with me. The prisoners, yes, they work with me. And we were able to change the tone of the street and realize that some sounds are deafening, but you need to listen. You can't turn a blind eye and say, that's not my business, that's not my problem. It can't be a thing, well, we're going to respond who dead, who get injured, who get arrested and go to jail. This has been the talk. We got to change that. No one should have to go through what we're talking about as far as death because of a beef. And no one should have to worry. You, general public, should have to worry. Business owners should have to worry. Let me close my business early because the street is hot. We've scared our own community into a nest, into a shelter, into a turtle shell that they're afraid to be citizens anymore. We're taking it back. Our street is real. Our lives are real. And we must do what's right.
Let me see your rubs.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was about individuals going into DLCA, into Department of Labor regarding jobs and not being hired. There are also a lot of government vacancies that I've seen sitting on your books, on the books for some time for the year. What is your team's approach to streamlining and filling these positions in order to make sure that you're running the most efficient government?
Very good question. Very, very good. Well, let me explain the the funded, but the positions aren't filled. The positions aren't filled because they're intended not to be filled. See, our government prefer to mess with the local funds that they don't have any federal criteria responsible to report on. And they will say, we're going to hire X amount of people when they submit the budget to the legislature, say we need 50-something people, 20-something, but they're really not going to fill those positions. And while the legislature approves the budget, then those positions become the slush funds for the government. Slush fund means they spend at will what they want to do with it without filling the vacancies. The other thing that happens with it is once they allow for that to happen, today, as you and I know, there's a significant change with the federal government. There's a budget before the legislature today. And that budget is still being moved forward as it is the same as yesterday. No one has taken note that the government has stepped into VI Housing Finance Authority and that they're going through every single agency and looking at every single federal funds awarded to the VI government. Every single one. This is not just VI Housing Finance Authority, you know. This is not just HUD. This is the Government Accountability Office looking for its money. We move money to VI Housing Finance Authority to WAPA, hospital, human services. And every way that the funds came through from the storm, the federal government is now looking for justification for the use of them. So this is not something that, as you heard our delegate says, well, we're going to find another agency so that the federal funds of the $23 billion could keep coming through that agency. It doesn't work like that. You tell me when we could dictate to the federal government who's conducting an investigation, okay, investigate over there, send the money over here. You tell me where we could do that. No, we're under this horizon, sweetheart, gentlemen. Could never happen. So these are the misleading gestures that are made. We're under a full-fledged investigation. If you could recall, you're familiar with PROMESA, right? So Puerto Rico went through a body where the government finances were controlled by an oversight committee approved by Congress in 2016, called it PROMESA. And in that PROMESA bill, the PROMESA Act, Oversight Act, which was created, the U.S. Virgin Islands was included in that. And along the way, it was removed by the Democrats, who I was as well as a Democrat, removed by the Democrats by lobbying to remove the VI government from it, along with other territories. It would have been one of the good sane things for the VI, really. Because as you know, realize Donna Christensen was pushing for a CFO. Today, now, we're removed from the OMESA side of it, which is a congressional act. Now, The federal government now has taken it over by stepping in now under a federal investigation that we have to satisfy within a few days. They gave us 30, but a 30-day window is pretty much fast. Removing the stuff, and we still can't step up to provide the data. So we are moving forward in a way where we are lost in where we are, and we continue. And I use that term for you to say that the legislature still continue with the same budget hearing, knowing that the funds are impacted and not asking for a re-submittal by the executive branch on what's happening here since they're providing funds. Several of it involve federal funds for the agencies, which they won't be able to touch. And this is serious to me. So education is not one of those things that a lot of people look forward to, because we want to keep our children from understanding civics. Okay? And if you're not a person who understands civics, what is said by many, we say, well, that's the way it is because they say so. We have a hierarchy that looks down on the Virgin Islands other than ourselves, where most of our federal funds for the territory is from a federal coffers for the services. And we're not speaking about it. We're not joining and participating and assisting in bringing this bleeding to an end. We just sit on the side and allow for it to run. And that's where we are going wrong as a territory. Because the people who feels it knows it. The household who's short with something services, they are the ones that's crying. Not those guys who have a credit card to get on the plane and go to a doctor as they feel like. I said they're going to a convention, but yet they're going to the doctor. Convention may be for a day, but they're there for 4 or 5 days, but they're taking care of the medical services. These are some of the things that happen blatantly, and I am not for that.
Thank you. Simone says, I really hope that the people are listening, because Benta has always been speaking like this and his language hasn't changed. It's the people who needs to change, that's thinking that those who have been in office for quite some time now will change things. They will not, because they are bought and sold. That's deep. We receive let's say messages almost daily regarding quality of care and the terrible working conditions at VI hospitals territory-wide. The shame of it is we cannot share that information because those same employees, and they're scared that they'll lose their job, and there's threats constantly, no posting on social media. They already docking pay, and there's so much going on behind the scenes. Does the Benta Potter team have a plan for the dire conditions of healthcare in the territory?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Like I mentioned earlier, we're building these 3 hospitals, none second to none. And I want to take people back to a few months ago, where the VI lottery, the hospital, is alleged that there were glitches in the computer system. There was more glitches. See, Doge came into the US Virgin Islands and information and data was collected. What you're seeing happening right now is based on the data and so much which were collected several months ago, right? And as we're moving forward, when you speak about medical, it's a pet peeve of mine. The very doctors of which I mentioned who wanted to build these 3 hospitals, right? They're ready to go. I believe in bringing in a floating hospital, or 2 floating hospitals. They were already on the way here. Our government says it's an overkill. We don't need that. And what angers me is even with the senators of whom I serve, some said it's an overkill as well. We don't need that. The ship has X amount of rooms. What are we going to do with it? I said, let's start thinking about medical tourism as well. Because the doctors who will be on those ships, they will fly if someone has a dialysis issue, whatever issue medically anyone he had in the Virgin Islands, the ship would have brought in the specialists here to serve those patients. Bring them in. The nurses would live on the ship. So I sat with the CEO of the hospital and explaining to him with the members. He said he has never heard a darn thing about any floating hospital that exists. And where am I coming with this hogwash? Never heard of a floating hospital. After COVID, and this is after COVID, every citizen in this territory saw a big white ship sail into the harbor of New York with a big red cross on it. And it was stationed there for over a year. And here in the VI, with individuals who were part of the Mercy ship and some of those other ships. They put aside ships for the VI because I called them. We got it worked out. Our Virgin Island government said no. So the ship, which was intended for the VI, went down to Trinidad. It went to Haiti. It left Haiti because the wave sort of did a little damage with just one of those freaky things. But we would have had that floating hospital here, serving our people, but the specialists flying in to serve our people. However, the individual who said no to that, and I'm not going to call their names tonight, they found their family members who got ill. And they had to do what? Lift them out of this territory. But individual who have family members who had a ailment, and I try not to get into it because it'd be too direct and pointing of what it is. And they called them very doctors, elected officials now. I provided the number, they called them. And the doctors said to them, okay, we're going to get them the best that exists for that service. And not only located it for them, but made the appointments and got them in ahead of other people. But that's their family. What about you who can't travel? What about you who need the services? Well, these individuals who you elect don't see you, but they see the family and themselves. This is what I'm about. And they're our door ready to open the door to come in again. And I will start with a floating hospital. First and foremost, how long does that take to be positioned? Less than 2 months.
Less
I
than
win this
2
election.
months, you said?
Less than 2 months, the ships are operational right now.
Okay.
And I left a window with them so that here comes this side of it, if that they will come. And I use the word if because they were here before and our government said no. If I'm successful, this is what's going to happen.
And what would stop the governor from getting that through? As governor, what would be your stumbling block?
Well, the only thing that would happen is there's a board at the hospital because you bring in a hospital here. The board of the hospital must be a part of it because you bring in pharmaceuticals and drugs. So the DEA has to be a part of it, and we already have the clearance to our hospitals to do so. And it ain't anyone who will stand in my way because I'll tear down bridges to bring it. I'll do what I got to do to bring it. And if it is that you're trying to stop something that benefits our people, the question is why? And the why I will find. And you don't want me to find the whys because I will act on the whys. Not when it comes to our people. That's at an end.
Like it. All right. Nisi.
One of the things that we've seen is that currently there's been a lot of discourse, disconnect, drama, negativity between the two branches of government, specifically the executive and the legislative branch. What plan do your team have to bridge some of that tension and cohesion to make a more efficient flow of process in getting bills passed and implemented in the territory to start to create some of these things that's on your agenda?
All inclusion. See, it's a government. And the legislative and the executive branch, the judiciary, I will leave the judiciary to be the judiciary for many reasons. But the executive and the legislature, the first branch of government, the legislative branch and the executive branch, they work more cohesively hand in hand with businesses, structures, funding, financing, and so forth. There's nothing to hide. Bring everybody to the table so you're hearing it firsthand. There's no investor that I would bring to the shore, and I've done it before. I've brought everybody to the table that you're going to hear about it on the street and don't have an input in the direction forward and querying those investors for what we're doing. Now you hear me talking to investors. I spent time at the Great World Reset. The only Virgin Islander who was there. The Great World Reset. And no one from the Virgin Islands was there but me. I wasn't sitting at the round table in the beginning, but when they heard my voice, they brought me right to the table to sit and speak. And what I did, I brought Amazon here to this Virgin Islands. Wanted to build a hub here. We located a spot on St. Croix because Amazon wanted their hub to be around the airport, but they needed land to build a hub. Would you believe that became a stupid argument of which island it should be built on? One fight was for St. Thomas. Where would Amazon build a hub? And you guys, if you're familiar with a hub for Amazon, you'll understand what it is. We're in St. Thomas at the airport. Would you be able to build the warehouses like that? St. Croix became the better option. You know that this territory refused and chased the company from looking into the VI, and they subsequently moved to build a hub in the Dominican Republic. These are the negligence within our territory. So I mentioned the Great World Reset because at the table, I'm not going to call the names right now, a lot of major corporations want to come if I am there to build, not build an office, build a business that hires over 5,000 people. The businesses that want to come into the territory and build what you call smart cities. And smart cities is the way for tomorrow. We are an island and we speak about education and niches, but we don't have a lot of what we want to educate our children in so they can be part of that niche. But if you bring the niche to us, and a smart city is encapsulated with every single industry that exists in structures in different areas on the island, doing multiple things, but they work for a company in Japan, China, wherever else. But the business is here and they fit in industries and so forth. And our government don't understand these things. But they say I'm a crazy man. But my vision in making a company a multi-billion dollars organization I mentioned to you earlier as a vice president of a telecommunication corporation, that was my responsibility in bringing. I've sat with kings and presidents and you name it. None of them have sat in or worked in the field that I've been in because it wasn't politics. It was business. And government is a business. Until we begin to think of it as a business and understand that we need individuals to understand how to create an industry and move business, then we'll continue spinning wheels because everybody getting paid every Thursday. It doesn't matter how the government succeed. It does that, we're getting paid. We're changing that so you become a part of this ticket. We're changing it to become a part of the ticket where you, even though you're a retiree, government employee retirement system, invest your money, but you're not a beneficiary. The government employee retirement system are not beating employees because they work and they do a great job. They're under what you call a 401 when it comes to their pension, along with WICO. But the GVI side, the general government side of it, everybody is under the GRS, but those entities are under a different pension fund. How is that? So I could take you much further with a lot more, but these are the corrective items that needs to be addressed assertively, so that every Virgin Island are beneficiaries and benefactors as well, not one side.
Thank you. Thank you. Bravo, Oakland Benta, says Francis Brown. Thank you for that. I have another question in the chat. I don't want to skip over anyone. So you were referring to the floating hospitals to help with the healthcare system. Aiden asked, would the local nurses be employed on these floating hospitals or all traveling nurses?
There'll be the government, those staff in the hospitals will be definitely employed because the CEO of the hospital will be the chairman of that operation because it's a government entity, right? We're not going to dilute our hospitals and our services. It's just that they're going to have the resources to do what's required to provide the best healthcare to our people. All the nurses will be on board. I'll take you back to when I bought the ship to the Virgin Islands. I don't know if you guys wouldn't know. But after the hurricane, in the Frederickson port, Mr. O'Neill Kohosa, remember that name? I approached him. And one of the things I was speaking about on the talk show was, and I said, our people are impacted. A lot of homes are destroyed. A lot of people were homeless. We need to get a place for them to stay, plus the hospital side. O'Neill Kohosa, who is the owner of the Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line and affiliated with the floating hospital side of it as well. In speaking with him, he was able to sit down with FEMA. And that's why, if you know, there was a big ship in Frederick after the storms that's been there for months, right? That very ship, the very owner, the very person who was there because of me. But you see, people wash it down. Now, O'Neill Kohosa in a conference with the governor for the floating hospital as well. The governor turned that whole portfolio over to the EDA, to his wife to handle. Now, it wasn't turned over to the hospital or Department of Health, to the EDA. You start to play games with people live in this place that sounds funny and would make a comedian of me because of. So at the end of the day, Co-hoster realizing in an argument or discussion with the Port Authority director then, where he was saying, well, we could do this in the Virgin Islands. They were saying no. It never happened. On the ship, a lot of people didn't know, the hospital, Wang Louis Hospital, just about every patient was on that ship after the hurricane. Just about every patient. The food was cooked at the hospital and brought to the ship. A lot of people don't know that. The rooms became hospital rooms on that ship. But yes, to the question, yes, the nurses, the staff, and so forth are and will be a part of that endeavor.
Thank you. Glad to hear it, because that's a big concern for locally employing our people, because there are a lot of concerns about that. So thank you for addressing it. Right after the territory celebrated St. Thomas Carnival, St. Thomians were suffering without power for days. What, if anything, would you suggest? What would you do to deal with the financial, structural, and mechanical problems with WAPA? What can be done to prevent rolling outages and finally stabilize the territory's electrical grid?
You want the truth to what's really happening in that?
Yes.
The truth is, the government of the Virgin Islands, like you and I, buy fuel to run an emission-emitted agency that runs 24 hours a day, like you fill your car at a gas pump, which is retail. The truth is this. There are three categories of fuel. There's retail, there's rack, and there's bulk. An emission-emitted agency, which WAPA is, 24 hours a day, running generators. What the VI government does not pay taxes on fuel. But we're buying fuel at retail, which includes taxes. Fuel at rack rate, because retail is what is $5, $6 a gallon. Fuel at rack rate, if you're buying fuel at rack rate, is $2 and some 35 cents thereabout. If you're buying the fuel at bulk rate, it's $1.75, and you could be less a gallon. Why are we buying fuel at retail value? Or are we really buying it at retail? The question is. And here comes the other fraction to this. The broker that they use, and you've heard us having these different fights with different fuel agencies, Trafigura in Puerto Rico, we're fighting with them. They want to take over part of WAPA. And on and on and on with the fights of powers, these guys making money. The broker probably buying the fuel at $1.75. But the invoice to the government is at retail price. That means if it's $1.75 a gallon we're paying for the fuel, and through the broker, the rest of the money, where is that going? Am I making sense to you?
Yes.
That's what's happening. So these rotations, as you will, not taking into consideration of the general populace, is those who are being fed from what the government pay to buy the fuel, fed now. They're sometimes cutting out the fat, taking it away from a lot of people, and taking it in the court as necessary. How is it that we have allowed for these people to infiltrate this behavior on us, when in fact, that our government, based on what we've done, is subsidizing WAPA over and over through the legislature without question. But we have to get the generators back on. WAPA is not an issue. I want to take the name WAPA out of the quantifier here. It's not WAPA. It is the management.
Okay.
Present and past participle of those who have been away before that created the scheme. I said that. I say it. And Puerto Rico had the same problem where they themselves found themselves under indictment, but our VI government, not one action by our local AG's office on any of these behaviors. But we live it and say, if anybody speaks up about it, you're a troublemaker or you start in trouble. Well, so far that you and I have seen over the years now, or months now, our people are now looking at things in a different direction. But this is the fact. We are using the retail value side of it, so we're buying fuel, but really and truly our organization with the broker and the fueler and the number presented on a ticket, nobody checks the broker to see what is really being this pretty much service to the broker. And we're going to change that as well. We're going to claw back. The term is claw back. We're going to claw back on some of these behaviors. And I can assure you, because I don't speak in the wind, that a lot of what's happening here and what I'm saying here to you tonight are facts. That these days are at an end. It's either we're doing it as a government or it will be addressed under the federal government in another process.
Thank you. Thank you. I got two quick questions from members of the chat that they want to ask. Let's stay fuel related. Ronald Picard says, what is your position on the reopening of the refinery?
I am pro diversification under the Safe Clause, the Plant Closure Act, of which our government never instituted. I am pro reopening the refinery and making sure certain security methods are in place. See, the Plant Closure Act, you could look it up, where when Lime Tree declared there was an issue, there was no one in Lime Tree while they were trying to start up everything almost at the same time. They didn't have the professional or the expertise in to make sure that things were done right. And that's where the whole thing collapsed. The issue became this. When Lime Tree acknowledged that there was an issue, our government said there was none. Our government said our people are complaining about a stench that came up from a manhole, a sewage manhole, miles away from people's homes, and try to hide that fabric of it. And eventually, the plant filed bankruptcy. With the Plant Closure Act, that I will make sure is in existence, it covers a series of variety of requirements that the plant would have to have in place. Evacuation, services medically, and all of the other requirements. And under those auspices, the scrubs within the chimneys and so forth to make sure that not one iota of a chemical to the best of our ability is emitted. The other thing that they used to do when it's raining, they would open those stacks all the way and emit those fumes into our rain clouds that people didn't know was taking place. But there are a lot of safe refineries throughout the United States, and we will pattern the same ideologies and functionalities to make sure that our community is safe.
Understood. One more from the chat. Troy asks, I don't know if I missed it, but what ideas do you have to activate and engage Virgin Islanders living in the States? How would your administration tap into the VI diaspora to contribute back home?
Sure, a lot of our retirees have moved to the States. That's not a secret anymore. Medically, it's not a secret anymore. Where cost of living is not a secret anymore. Many people retire and live long. And while we've heard members of our own government said based on the GRS issue, that our retirees are living too long. A heightened disrespect, that is. People taking care of themselves, they were the footprints that we are following in the sand that have left a human ability for all of us to achieve and grow, but yet we become condescending and saying that they're living too long and draining the GRS. I would push for them to continue to take care of themselves and live much longer. The problem is that our government, because we didn't put things in place as far as the audits are very important. The data is very important. For instance, a household of a certain amount of people, the data for those people are not in the system, so we're not getting the services. To bring a lot of our diasporas back to the VI, there's a lot of things that we have to correct. When we say come home, I will say come home now. So you will be able to come home once you correct the issues. It is education, it is healthcare, it is employment, it is salaries, fair and equivalent, so you can survive in your household, middle income as well. And it's not just that we say we come home and you get a job. The future of tomorrow, what is that going to look like? Because you've seen, for instance, the refinery closed down about 2 times before. People left, they came back and went back to another job, and then nobody's got a chance to come back because we up and down, topsy-turvy. We look at how our children today, you graduate from high school, you find yourself going through the remedial when you go to colleges because you're graduated at a 9 or 10 grade equivalency based on our smart balance score now, right? So you have a challenge. How do we change that course of what we have done wrong to make sure that we correct it so that we can attract the diaspora back to home And that's where I would fast track a lot of the services. And through some individuals who you will hear from this week who are coming in from DC, and what are some of the things we're doing to make sure that the funds get what it's supposed to, education is handled a certain way, our teachers are certified so that they don't go through the stupidness that they've been going through because they didn't meet certain requirements, that the education curriculum is addressed like it should be, and that the Board of Education become the Board of Education. Because it's a board that has requirements, that the assignments of people who are placed in position, that the board are the individuals who select those individuals, not the executive branch. Because I don't want to do that. That's why we have boards, we have the subject matter experts. So their skill set, we'll make sure that the skill set that they have is right, that they're doing what's required to make sure that we have the best within our school system, and that we have the best services for those who have left for the reason they have left. They could come back home. A lot of people who have to go to the doctor 3 days a week, retirees and so forth and whatever have you, it's not easy. They're paying rent or whatever means of living they have to take care of themselves out there, plus in the VI. They pay the taxes in the VI and all this other stuff, it double for these individuals. But survival is a key. And we have created that. And that's why the areas of all the vaccine cycles which we've researched, we're going to bring it home. We bring it home so that they can have the services here in the VI. One of the fights I've had and will have, a lot of people don't know this. We have a lot of physicians in our territory. And it's become a monopoly of financial assets of service. And the insurance for the government Cigna has identified and explained to the VI government over and over for a blood test, basic blood test that you pay probably about $40 to $50 in the States for, is sometimes $100 to $300 in the Virgin Islands. Basic. So the Cigna insurance, of which the government sector uses, is wiped out by the blow of one nostril based on the bills that's being accumulated in our private physician offices. And in our private physician offices, a lot of our physicians are bringing in doctors some way and providing the services in their private offices. But the VI government, with a lot of those doctors, we pay the malpractice insurance. They work in our hospital with an agreement that the VI government agreed to. We pay them some $90,000+ a year, but allow for them to open their private offices, and we equip it with government funds. And then, rather than the spin-off of making sure that the service remain equal and on par for the people, they have their own price scale different from what we have in our hospitals. Make it difficult. I can't come no real in that. Changing that stigma so that we have the proper services.
Thank you. And real quick, Rosemary is asking if you can elaborate on the younger generation, I guess which age range you're referring to when you say that?
The younger generation for employment?
Yes.
Okay. My plan. Our children today in our schools spend more time in a classroom than anything else. We have the requirement that they need, yes, but we have lacked the services as far as making sure that they're able to fit into the services, right?
Mhm.
My thing is, no child staying in the school all day, okay? They are going to go into some government office. They're going to get a stipend in somebody's business, the EDC companies, wherever it is, after they finish the requirements, right, during the day. And that is how we're going to now build up our workforce in this territory. Make sure that it's accredited the way we're going to do it, though. Because if they're in VOCAD and they spend more time in VOCAD, they have the math, the English, and science, they go into some place where they will understand how it is to start a business. We'll make sure we have them, right? They start a business, we can make sure that they're saving. We're going to make sure they understand financial literacy and how it is you handle a corporation. We don't do that for our own. When you look at what's going on today, just about every single soul that's running our Virgin Island private sector businesses per se, the majority is outside and ours become the subcontractors, if they're contractors and so forth. We're going to change that. Get them into those domains that they learn and give them a stipend.
What age range would you be looking for to return home?
But I'm looking for those once they finish school. I'm looking for those who are seniors who want to be home because the services will be available.
Hmm.
And the other thing that I'm going to do is cost of living allowance. Some people retire with every 2 weeks to go home with about $400-500 after everything else, right? And the cost of living is so high in the VI. But that cost of living without a little 400 plus it make do for them in the States. The cost of living that on the COLA, which people receive under Social Security, reach a certain age,
Yeah.
why is it that we don't have it for the government employees in our own system? Right? Looking at the diversification of how our investment through the GRS is handled, that a segment of that is sectioned into another category that our retirees can be benefactors of COLA, cost of living allowance as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Nisi?
So, a very trending theme that's been happening the last few years in our territory is corruption and theft of government funding. If the Benta Potter team is successful, what financial stranglehold will you be implementing to one, reduce theft of government funding, strengthen our financial system for more efficient streamlining and auditing, to deter this type of behavior?
Well, I'll tell you right now, and I want the people of this territory to hear. It is not easy for me to look at our own Virgin Islanders, especially when you warn them that these things may happen as far as being indicted. And as I mentioned to you, I've spent the past several years working with my federal partners as well and other entities throughout the world with other world economic issues. I'm doing it already. And applying it today going forward, once I become governor of this territory, is not a thing that's hard for me to implement because I'm doing it now. All these individuals who've been arrested over the years, unfortunately, things happen. But when you have an individual who is an efficient uh, investigator, someone who understands numbers, understand micro and macroeconomics, understand how you diversify an economy, and don't wait to find the bleeding and address it. I've done it in the private sector. I did it in government to the best of my ability, and I try to educate our own so it doesn't go much further and it fell on deaf ears. I will continue to use my federal partners and the other side of the aisle, which I can't mention here tonight, to continue doing what we're doing to kill the bleeding so that the resources that belongs to the people gets to the people like it should. I say he's running for governor, but he sounds like he want to put people in jail. No, I don't put people in jail. They put themselves. They touch people's money. It don't belong to them. And then when they touch the federal money, do you know that the federal government don't say, okay, it was John Doe that stole $1 million or 5 or 10 million. It's not the people of the territory. That's not how that works. That $5 or 10 million is gone. How many are impacted by the loss of those revenues that should have been going to a specific program with specificity in that program? How many people are find themselves on the other end? A lot of people under the Section 8 program where the $16 million disappeared from us. Nobody talked about that. And we see a lot of people living in the cars. Nobody realized that the federal government, these people living in somebody's home under Section 8, and they had to be removed from the program because $16 million disappear. Not disappear, but just the document is so yes, it disappeared. And then we look at the SNAP program and we talk about the requirement, and just not us alone, but if we had done certain things, the impact would not have been so greatly felt in this territory. So I'm not reinventing anything or trying to say that it's going to be different a certain way. I'm saying it's going to be a different this way, the correct way. And I have the assistance in that. And that's what I said. It's not going to take me 6 months. I've been doing this for the past several years. So once we get there, day one, or even in November after election, the ball starts rolling. Nothing can happen until I'm sworn in, Mr. Potter and I, and then we can execute the documents appropriately. But it will start day one, immediately, right after. And now that we have, and I can say to you, we already have drafts of documents that is prepared already. with MOUs or MOUs or so with the federal government to move forward, or agencies to move forward, the private sectors to move forward. We just got to get there to get it moved like we should.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as far as government corruption, not only is there issues specifically throughout the government, we've had not one, not two, but three and more either currently sentenced or waiting or fighting charges. And these are department heads that the current governor placed into position. How would you, as governor, stop that from happening?
I'll tell you what I try to do. I start with those same individuals and I pleaded with them. I begged them. What's taking place here is criminal. And that you need to, and this is me to each other, and they'll tell you. They will say, but B, they call me B, Benta, you know I wouldn't get involved in these things. I said, I'm not asking you, you know. I am saying that you need to come right, and this is what needs to be done. I've spoken to the governor about these floundering behaviors and that things needs to be addressed. Deaf ears. I said, a day is going to come where it is going to come to our shores and we're going to be the embarrassing and laughing stock of the world because of our negligence. It was in deaf ears. I have spoken to each of them, even to the point where I try to get the Office of Management and Budget a few days before the execution of the federal government and the acts as far as the indictments, that they need to release certain documents that come straight with the federal government because it is not you, it is the entire populace of this territory will be impacted. And it was, we have things under control and you don't know what you're talking about. The gap was closed going forward. The question is, what will be done? Nothing different from what I'm doing right now going forward, even if it's me. And one of the stories people are asking me about is, how is it that you arrest your own son? As chief of police, my son, this is me in my household, decided that he's going to be a certain way on the street and that his father is the chief of police. And my son is proud to hear me speak about it, right? It was years ago. Goes into an establishment and created disturbance. My son. The sergeant and chief calls me, the chief of police, to say, Chief, we have your son here in the station and this is the issue. What do you want us to do with him? And my answer to him was, excuse me. So, but Chief, this is your son. What are you going to do? I said, my thing, and hear me clear. And this is the sergeant. It scared the hell out of him. If I don't see the arrest report on my desk in the morning, find yourself in a position to be placed on charges just as well. He said, but Chief, this is your son. I hung up the phone. See, I love my son. I love my children. But I understand my Lord to become a bleeding, sovereign behavior in our territory of something that they learned in my household. My son was arrested. I went to court. I was the father. The judge saw me in the courtroom and decided want to talk to me in the chamber. I said, hey, no chamber discussion taking place here. What's going to happen here is this, in accordance with the law. Period. That's me. So to the question whether or not the service will be provided to make sure and curtail this vexing issue in this territory and this behavior, the answer is yes. I love my children, but I stand firm that all of us must walk the same road like everybody else. Nobody better than nobody in here when it comes to me. My son is better than anybody because I was a chief of police. You pay the consequences. Different to a lot of others with a lot of what you've heard in the past, with many people still getting pat in the wrist, where they have weapons and you name what they have you and arrested and they walk around and it's okay. Those things can be that we provide what you call servitude around here, with only certain people who don't have a name are the ones who sit in our jails and pay the consequences only. Those days are done.
Wow. I am impressed. I'm not gonna lie. I am impressed because that takes a lot That takes integrity. It takes honor to do something like that. Other people might see it differently, but as a father, I understand what you needed to do. So, wow, that's
Thank you.
impressive, sir. Really. Thank you for that story for sharing also. I have one more question for myself, but if you'd allow us, I don't want to take up too much of your time because it's been going for a while. I have some rapid fire questions that I'd like to pose after we're done. If
Sure,
you're
sure, sure, sure,
all
sure.
right. All right. So my final question is the current plan to upgrade the territory airport seems to be at a standstill with no way to fund the project. With the airports losing flights and airlines in desperate need of repair and flight costs increasing, how do you intend to address that issue?
Sure. This whole upgrade that the government is moving towards, that the Port Authority is moving towards, they didn't sit with the airline. The airline. They didn't sit with the airlines. The airlines were not a part of the meeting. Right? When you decide you're privatizing the airport, you have a lot of government employees who works there. They're under the GRS as well. And then you say to them, you could be all right because your pensions will continue as normal and you wouldn't be interrupted. That's a lie. When you have individuals who say that to big men and women, that you can be working for a private company, but you're still covered under the GRS when you know better. And then some of the employees believe in good faith that is true. I will not, and it's not going to privatize any of our government services. The question is, while they move to privatize the airport, saying that we're not making money, I beg to differ. The parking lot that they just built, they're grossing over 200 plus a month, almost 500 a month. The Port Authority pays the VI government, but $500 a year or whatever it is. And all of the other trimmings that goes with that as far as moving robustly into doing certain things. These things with these private companies, and one of the company, which is now trying to take a back seat, you guys need to understand the Department of Homeland Security as far as some of the trickeries that's been taking place. There's a company, which is a Chinese company, who came through the back door. Yes, they're registered in the United States, to Canada, to the United States, or whatever have you, but it's a Chinese company. And when you talk about Department of Homeland Security, and you're mustering something to a back door without even understanding who you're doing business with, it creates an issue. You have TSA, the FAA, Customs and Border Protection who works in the facility, the majority, that manages and operates what goes on in the runway and within the terminal. And you decide to go through a back door where you know that the United States is in a certain category, where there's certain countries, and you have China now coming in to take over your airport. How do you do things? Bringing it back holistically, it is not that the agency is an issue. It is what has been done with the agencies for other factors and other benefits, for other friends who have businesses along within the agency that they're not paying their fair share like they should. We have X amount of hotel rooms in the territory. And what brings airlines are hotel rooms. St. Croix doesn't have that influx like St. Thomas does because you don't have the hotel rooms. We got to go to the area that generates what's required for that entity to grow, and not grow just because we're saying it, but feasibly grow in the right direction. And that is what we're going to be pushing forward, as there are many other hoteliers who would love to do business, but doing business above board, but putting the money on the table, not under anybody's table, so somebody stick their hand under the counter and take it. Those things are at end.
Thank you. Thank you. Question from the chat. What is your input about universal health care? Because in certain places or countries, they do have universal health care.
I believe because our numbers are low, right? And there was a move with DeSantis, whom him and I, we've started with spoken before. And in the discussion we've had, he's moved towards talking about getting rid of property taxes and so many different things. A merger as far as merging our healthcare with each other. We're a small territory. But enumeration, you get the dividends down as far as the copay and so forth down to something that's easily managed. Universal healthcare is good, but at the end of the day, we need to partner with another entity that has the numbers and we don't have the numbers. And we don't have the numbers because a lot of exodus over the years, over what 87,000 our population is, they say based on our census. We were 100 plus thousand, and we just declining more and more every year because I'm pretty sure the next go around, if we don't start to correct some of these things, that our census numbers will say something different. As you heard, many people complaining that our mail will have to go to Puerto Rico first before it comes here. But we don't have the numbers. No major carrier gonna fly into the VI with a major big jet only just for 10 packages. So they put it in the little carriers by landing in Puerto Rico and then it's sorted and shipped over to the VI. If we had the numbers, the capacity, then of course they will come in here. Universal health care coverage is something that we could work with, but we can partner with, I would say Florida more than anything else.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have any other questions before I start our rapid fire round, Nisi? You're muted.
Oh, my final question would be, there is a high number of government vehicles that are constantly on the streets outside of non-government hours for people that aren't assigned personal vehicles. Do you guys have a plan to address that if elected?
Sure. You have your own car. There's services, because there's some entities that did that on 24-hour call per se. But if you're on call and you're in a bar drinking rum, then you're not on call, right? So those services, as far as those vehicles who become their private vehicles, where individuals use them at will and go wherever they feel like at all day hours of the day and night, those vehicles will be parked out. Because the fuel that is being used for going to the supermarket, shopping at will, and we see it, no secret. If you see it, and it's become a thing where it's ignored, it's not something that people really understands, but those vehicles will be parked up, will be managed accordingly, turned into a depot like they were before, and recorded. Hours of work, you pick it up, you do what you have to, but during and after the hours where you are not an employee that is on those requirements, those vehicles will be parked up at a depot somewhere in each of the islands.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we're going to head into our rapid fire question. And the premise for this segment will be, we have so many questions. The responses are going to need to be as concise as possible, maybe 2-3 sentences if possible, because I'm still getting questions in my messenger and everything. So the people really want to know, what the Potter, the Benta Potter team has to say. Oh man, so we're gonna get into it. Nisi, you got all yours out? Just verifying before I start.
No, go ahead.
All right. Is there a plan or consideration to address, well, we answered this one about the historical buildings. Yeah, we did this already. Waste management. Right now, there's too much abandoned vehicles. Can there be a public-private partnership to help clean up the vehicular waste all over the island?
Are you talking about abandoned vehicles and so forth?
Yeah.
Waste management, I heard you said something about waste management. I jumped into that quick. Waste management will be brought back under public works. We have extended something where it shouldn't be because of a consent decree. But this is where we keep losing ourselves because we're not addressing the issues and the skeleton that exists the right way. And yes, there are companies and agencies that for the first go around that we're going to need to really immerse them in to assist with doing that, because the VI government doesn't have the capability right now. So we will have to definitely use the services. But there are funds available for that federally as well. But we don't tap into federal funds because you have to justify the numbers when you spend them, and nobody wants to do that. So to answer for that, yes, we will.
Okay. There needs to be a program in place for when we have major storm events. Why not have one already in place so we're not scrambling to put a plan in place with after storm cleanup?
We're based on the Stafford Act. okay, and the adoption of or the amendment of the Stafford Act as well.
Hmm.
Those things are generally generated already through VITEMA. So when you see all of this taking place, the last thing that occurred where you said that we didn't have qualified people in the Virgin Islands, uh, we went outside, we got outside contractors, right? But we had people who were qualified. But there was individual who wanted other people to get the contract. We're gonna change that. There is a prior to, and an existing plan under VITEMA for storms of all categories, tsunamis, hurricane, everything is there already in the Bible.
Hmm.
When you're here, we got to create something new. That's for us. It exists already. We just have to make sure that it's enforced like it should, not with special people who will be the ones who will be the benefactors. We got to stop that.
Thank you. Ask Mr. Benta to speak on the clawback and your plan for the homeless.
The clawback is straightforward and it's already in place. We're in government sector side of it. We see that there's malfeasance in an act of behavior in a certain way. We're selling government property or other things concerning the government behavior, and we can find a crime in it. We could claw back and take it back from whomever to sell the property to, and bring it back under the GVI. That's clawback, an example. And the other question was,
What is your plan for the homeless?
oh, the homeless is just a peach to me because it's easy, right? Our government, based on to include even those second chance for those guys who come out of jail and trying to get ahead, because they're homeless as well as some of them,
Sure.
is that we can move and exist with the structures that exist today with a manager of those facility and the homeless side of it, because if there's mothers with children living in cars in this territory, right? Or living in some place in somebody's yard of abandoned homes, we could change that and offset that whole thing, but we got to get the data as far as who they are and get them into the facilities. And those facilities can be built with the steel frame buildings. They can be erected in less than 10 months, right? Under the federal government and get it moving. It is a crisis we have. It's a state of emergency, but no one is stepping forward because it's not their family. We could do better.
Sure. Thank you. Next question. Speaking of after storm cleanup, what are your thoughts on developing a local consortium of licensed professional skills trade people to work through our recovery after storms?
I'm 100% behind that because I was saying earlier where many of these, our locals, they became the subcontractors rather than contractors. Where our government said that we didn't have anyone here who was qualified, but they're licensed under licensed consumers affairs. They had to get the SAMs and the DUNs and so forth, and they have them. One of the things that created a push off for a lot of our local contractors is that they said they had to be bonded in the beginning. And if they didn't have a bond of a certain amount, they couldn't be included in part of the process of the RFP and so forth. That's a lie. Our government under VI Housing Finance Authority and the Public Finance Authority, we could have provided the bonding for our local registered licensed business in this territory. But we chose outside because those individuals that pay outside, funds leave, go in an account somewhere else, not to our own. So it's harder to track. Simple and straightforward.
You know, this is just me wanting to know. Because several times over this episode, you've mentioned how the government goes outside to contract. Why is that?
Because it's easier to hide the funds in a foreign bank than in our local bank.
Oh, okay.
I want you to pay attention of offshore banking that's taking place heavily in this territory. We moved to Nevis, the Bahamas, we go to Lupa, we go to Dubai, we go to Africa, right? We move some to St. Lucia and go to the back door as well, where we jump into some of those Bolivia Bank, Venezuela, and all that's been taking place from right here in the Virgin Islands, right? And those hiatus of things will be hitting our shores pretty soon with the facts.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for being so candid. Appreciate it.
I'm straightforward. That's me.
I see. What will you do to stop the rehiring of retired individuals to other departments and of those who have records of theft from the government?
That's pretty easy. You just stop it. The thing is, though, and as I mentioned, we haven't taught civics in our schools, and we haven't prepared our young generations to fill those voids. There are some areas where some of the retirees can be called back, right? At the same time, we have to make sure that retirees remain as retirees. Now they can come back as a business owner with a business license rather than rehashing themselves into the GVI and going backwards, so that they have to come out of retirement instead of giving them 3 years. But that's another issue altogether, right? Because they're pensioners already. They're collecting the pension plus collecting the dividends separately from one or the other. We assist them in becoming business owners, whether a consultant, get them licensed under licensed consumers affairs, and they come in under a contract as a business. That's the best way to handle that.
Jai,
Are
you're
you
muted.
for or against establishing a recycling program and facilities in the VI?
Oh, I'm pro recycling. From tires to so many things. The tires can be used. There's a machine, again, you're in my field because these are the things that we try to bring to this territory, where the machine freezes a tire and it slams it, it crushes it, to separate the steel and whatever have you. We use that for roads and whatever have you, a better ride. The same
Yep.
rubber, same tires, so forth. We make waste trash cans. And I mean, this is what's going on. You see China right now, they run out of trash. They're begging the world around now to start finding a way to send our trash to them. But we haven't learned the idea and the technology that exists. That's why I'm speaking about creating our own smart city.
Okay. Candidate Benta, as a former police officer that also held roles in management, do you think it's imperative to have a mandatory fitness program for police officers? The police
Yes.
officers of today should maintain a certain level of fitness and physical hand combat training, which would aid in the way in which people would respect them.
Yes, and then not only that, but on the streets, as I said, as a police training director, which I was, right, in charge of the police training academy. On the street, it's not only that the individuals or police officers are protecting the lives of others, but if you can't protect yourself or defend yourself, you're dead.
True.
So you create a double standard where here it is now, the person you went to try to assist, you become a victim as well, and the person who was calling for help, they also have the issue to serve, which they expire otherwise. But yes, I believe, and there was one, and the individuals themselves, and it's one of the things that I look at is you cannot be an instructor in training an individual. You yourself just say get down and do 10 push-ups, but you can't do one. So it must be straight across the board, that not only it be humanistic, but it's gradual, because some people want to take advantage and say, I want you to do 10 miles. So you can't do that. It must be a program systematically structured with records to show you improvement on a slow scale. If you're not there, people pass to get a heart attack. We got to be careful. But I agree with the defensive side. I agree with the fitness side. And I think every police officer who went through the police academy who thinks that they don't have to, then you didn't need to go to the academy, right? So maintain what you were taught and we learned. It's also for your self-preservation.
Why can't we, or can we, re-implement the Officers on Foot Patrol initiative? No one truly knows these police officers because they are reactive versus proactive.
Well, truth be told again, the Virgin Islands, a police department, by way of force, how you disperse your force, comes with the numbers within your community. Police officers, the police department has 3 shifts or 2. I don't know what they move it down to, some with 12 hours. I don't know what they've done. But when you have 3 shifts and you have zones where the work out, where you only have a certain amount of police officers, you maybe have 1 on patrol, and you'll hear, well, we don't want to talk about the numbers of how much police we have. That is nonsense, all right? Because if the people, the community don't know how much they know how to become vigilant, then you put them at a disadvantage, is why you have so much robberies going on and people getting away like they're getting away. The foot patrol side of it is a very essential side of it. It's not a punishment. Some will look at, oh, put me on foot patrol as a punishment because they want to drive in a car, right? Foot patrol is one of the most essential side of community orienting and learning who your people are on the street. Not only foot patrol within the towns, but patrol in the neighborhoods, in our housing community. Going around and learning the grounds. I am pro that. So the police department is based on numeration for disbursement in the field. You have 1 police car covering an entire zone at times. or sector. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
you're in a police car all driving, and you're the only one police car on the road where you're taking calls from a dispatch. You don't have the manpower to cover to respond to other incidents while you're dealing with one case. And by the time you have the unit come from one zone, the other zone, to come down to you, who's covering that zone that one unit leave.
True.
So we're going to change that. It's been a handicap for years, but the retention of your law enforcement personnel is the question that many should ask. Why are we retaining them? Because as a police, when I was there, we had some 30 plus officers per squad, 3 squads in one zone, 4 zone, 3 zones. Now, yeah, so you have one, you have two. That's still enough for, as far as the ability to perform without shooting somebody.
True. True. Good point. Thank you. Can we do some drone surveillance of these high crime areas, whether it be drug sales or assaults by weapon? Let's do deeper surveillance.
I agree with that. You have the federal government doing more of that here in the Virgin Islands than we are doing at the police department. So it's something that is required. Now, the requirements based on the surveillance drones and privacies, okay? Because you want people going and people window peeping into people's bathroom and all the nonsense.
True.
But and then the requirements by those individuals who have their private drones by law, right? What is the range of how they can use them? Now, you have so much people out there with drones, right? And things you could do with working with these people that have drones, they become part of your eyes and ears if you do it right. Right? I believe that the citizens themselves on the streets, if you do certain things with them, they could become part of your eyes and ears. And those are the things that we got to get into to bring the community into the fold, to be a part of the solutions, not stay silent and allow the problems.
Can we have units do random spot checks and drive through these areas, making themselves visible, utilize the mounted lights so that people know they are there?
Yes. Yes, it's done in many places throughout the. Europe is where it started this first. Addiction detection of lights says something not close, but people see it is a deterrent to a certain degree.
Will Benta order that the financial books be audited?
100%, yes.
Thank you. All right. When you become governor, they say when you become governor and inherit the corruption taking place in the different departments, i.e., fraud, mismanagement of funds, vendor debt, how will you tackle this area and bring about accountability, transparency, and trust?
Well, straightforward. Some of these agencies within the government that already have issues, bring them under the GVI so it has a better control. And in working with, like I said, my partners, what we're going to be doing and have been doing is making sure that we are dotting all the I's. And part of the push right now, which hasn't been said in this dialogue we're having, is I've been the only voice with the federal government pleading for them to understand that these funds are so important to the people of this territory. And we can't have our people's hands held to the fire for the individuals whom they elected or how they have been appointed in position as if it is every single Virgin Islander. Right now, we are painted as a territory of corruption. I've explained that this John Doe and the public who have no authority to sign or the decision making on any of the actions that are being investigated, it's that is them, and to have some leniency. And I think it is getting through gradually, because of course, more so than everything that you've seen, these trials that we've had, a good example, it was that the jury of 14, it was only 12 who rendered the vote or the verdict that the court takes, but there's a jury of 14. And I think with the federal government, what they've seen is that every single one of these cases, all 14 found probable cause to render a verdict of guilty in the atmosphere of those individuals. So that shows the federal side of the aisle, that the people of the Virgin Islands are not naive and that they will do what's right. Before, they were afraid to even move any of these cases in the Virgin. And that's why nothing was going on, because they said the people will not go this way, they will allow it. We just deal with it financially and just take our funds. I couldn't see that taking place anymore. I couldn't. So in fixing those vexing issues, it took some bravada with the people of this territory, knowing families and friends of some of these people and making the right decision to do what's right. So yes to the question.
Thank you. And now I got a couple from the messenger, and that's about it. All right. You served one term in the Virgin Islands legislature, but were not reelected. Why do you believe voters chose not to return you to the Senate? It's a two-part one. For voters who did not believe your performance in the Senate warranted another term, what would you say to convince them that you are now prepared to lead the entire executive branch as governor?
And the answer to this is easy. I was the only senator that stood up and spoke about Jeffrey Epstein and what will become of this territory if we don't act in accordance with the laws as this body, legislative body, and to make sure that the laws of this territory is enhanced. Jeffrey Epstein, through his order, was to shut me down. Straightforward, documented, shut him down. The entire body, okay, of the legislature, and then some of the senators who fell in line with them began to say, well, Benta is always in St. Thomas. He's a St. Thomas senator. I'm a St. Croix senator now. What he didn't say was after the hurricane, the chambers in St. Croix were destroyed, so we didn't have any hearings in St. Croix unless we used UVI or a hallway somewhere. You're not in a room with the testifiers, the people who elected me to serve. I got my behind on the aircraft, just like those who travel St. Croix to go into the legislature to testify, and I made sure I was present in the legislature, in the well. While the St. Croix senators, a lot of them were at home in a home, doing video conferences into the legislature. And while I made noise with them about being lazy and not coming to work, oh, what are we going over there for? They living good. My thing is, it's not about them. It's about the people and what we represent and what we were elected to do. So they started this fiasco, and a lot of those individuals who ran for office, they rose to the occasion to tell people, you see, talking about Epstein and corruption in the government, there's no such thing. This is 2019 now, okay? There's no such thing. And don't mind him, he's a crazy man making up things about people, upstanding citizens in this territory. Don't mind him about any federal cuts. That would never happen here. That's 2019. We're in 2026 and we live in it where we could have avoided it. So my loss for the 34th legislature, I expected, based on what I was hearing, that of course the public began to gather the concept that, hey, he's always in St. Thomas. I was always at work. However, this was the only senator when it came to per diem, because when you overnight, I didn't believe in walking off a floor, rushing to catch a plane, and the hearing is still going on. So let's get the hell out of here. Let's go back to St. Croix, but the hearing is still going on. That's the people's business. I would stay until the hearing is done. And the business office, as a senator, they said, Benta, you need to submit for your per diem. Big fight, not the senator. Ms. Bartlett in the legislature will tell them, noise they made with me, the business office, we can't close our book because you haven't submitted him for per diem for months. But then when you talk about those senators who created a rumor that I'm a St. Thomas senator because they were in St. Croix and a laptop in their home and doing extracurricular activities where I got to St. Thomas and work on behalf of the people, where my legislation on bills sat in legal counsel by divine instruction not to move them, right? But when it came to speaking on the floor on behalf of the people of this territory, let them look at the records. I was that viper on the floor on behalf of the people, speaking just as I am today of things that will come if we don't become part of fixing these vexing issues. So I have no blame for the people of the territory to say, well, they didn't vote for me, so they're no good. All I have for them is love, because I understand when you have individuals in your head that says things and you run with it, a lot of them have come to me and said, Benta, we want to apologize to you. So did I lose the election? No, what they have done is they've unveiled this individual to work along with other agencies to do what we're doing today to fix the same issues that I was trying to correct years ago before it became criminal. That's what happened.
Thank you. Thank you. What are your views on the land grab on St. John and Water Island?
I'll tell you, and that's the next thing that I will claw back on. You see, you cannot disenfranchise your own people when you know better. This is an industry of individuals who are now using a system where laws are already established. They're violating the very laws which were created with specific reasons and doing otherwise because of who the handlers are. We can't do that. You know, we have the whistling key, which was a warning from before. The whistling key deal was something that was started under the previous governor administration. And then, of course, all they did was change the date and the signature and submit the same document with the whistling key under this administration. And it was done willfully because there were other plans for other individuals to get certain other sectors in this community. Here we have this one in Water Island where it should not have been, the legislature should not have entertained it without doing what's right. If you say you want to see XYZ, make sure it's there, right? That you disenfranchise your veterans. That's the respect you have for your own veterans, right? That's the respect you have for your own people. So it's an entity that, we say this tonight, and we become the troublemakers. You realize that, right?
Of course.
How dare you talk about that? Because the individuals who in charge of this territory have spoken. How dare you question? And that was the same thing with Epstein, like I said. How dare he touch this? Let's do him like we did to Sean Michael Balloon. We got to get rid of him. We got to create a campaign against him. And that's what they did. They created a campaign. It worked. But it placed me in a position now to address what they didn't expect. And this will continue an investigation and do what we got to do to make sure that this territory rid ourselves of this nonsense so that our territory can be whole again.
Thank you. This last one, where we went over it already. So if you'd be so kind, because you just joined the stream, you'd be so kind to just kind of sum up quickly for her. Naima asks, what goal or goals would be the first priority to tackle when becoming governor, and how soon do you think you'd be able to achieve those goals?
WAPA within a month, the hospital within 2, education as far as our school within 3, and it could go on to all the others. But within less than 6 months, the issues that are plaguing us, that we have already went through with the team that I have, we are starting right away, and we don't need time to do any research or evaluate. We already have the data and information that we need.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Hey, this has been a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for answering all these questions and being so straightforward and candid with us. We really do appreciate it. You and your running mate,
Merwin Potter,
have a campaign launch coming up. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. It is as I said, it was one of those things. Many people were saying, well, are you guys running? We were waiting to see who prevailed out of the Democratic Party. We are independent candidates. Merwin Potter is a staunch Democrat. He's an independent. Myself, a Democrat as well, Republican as well, independent as well, ICM as well. But I'm a people all-arounder for every honest, earnest citizen. And the launch of this campaign will be at Walkers by the Sea, and it'll be on August 13th, which is Thursday coming, where we will now unveil our platform, where we intend to take this territory, how we intend to take it there. And we will definitely explain in verbatim how and when the other side of the aisle, once we sit in our forums or debates, on what direction we will take this territory to. So we invite everyone to come out, come and listen to what's facts, not fiction and not just gossip, but the ideology of those to see that what we have been trying to prevent, because we had a prelude to it over the years, and now we're living it. Our movement now, the damage is done, is how do you fix it? And that is what our campaign is going forward, fixing the issues, not complaining anymore. The community that's felt it, they lived it. Time to move forward.
All right. Oh, Candidate Benta. All right. So many people may have already written off the independent candidates, especially when related to the governor, because a lot of people already think your opponent, Stacey Plaskett, has it in the bag. what would you like to say to those voters?
Well, we want to see who's going to make it to the finish line, who is not going to be indicted before we get there. We want to see how we we permanently knew certain things by documents that were in your hands, but yet you say they didn't exist, nor you were aware of them. We want to know because, as anyone in a legal field, as an attorney of the government, being forewarned of certain criminal activity, where as an attorney, it wasn't presented to the body or the community, it left to be a secret when we were forewarned by other law enforcement agency, and that's okay in the minds of some, it is not. And when, as an attorney, with individuals such as the victims, and I'm going to call their name as far as those six ladies, but look at those others that's coming behind right now with the other bank issue and see what's going to happen then and see how we move forward. But as individuals that brag about bringing all this money to our territory, where through the rum cover over, with my interaction with Pablo Hernandez Rivera, who is a Republican and who is the representative for Puerto Rico, and with who they brag about as Jennifer Gonzalez Colon as their good friend, when we through the PROMESA left Puerto Rico under the PROMESA, and we removed just the Virgin Island and its territory, left Puerto Rico to handle their own affair, to being assigned under the PROMESA aspect, where governors and senators and upper and lower house of the Senate and commissioners went to jail. We remove ourselves. If we were under the same umbrella, a lot of the bleeding that's taking place here in the Virgin Islands would not have happened. But we removed ourselves. When we speak about the Government Accountability Office and you say, oh, I agree with the Government Accountability Office, but from 2019, when I was speaking on it to avoid what's happening today, you didn't agree with me until myself working with the Government Accountability Office and realized I said the deadline has come and they reissued what they offered. You sent out a press release and said you agree in 2023. But today, an agreement in a press release is not an action. The action should have been that we should have pulled the House together, lobby the House to move towards assigning or correcting this issue before it gets to where it's at today. It was never done. And every press release with the rum cover over, my team pleaded with the governor of Puerto Rico, right, to sign on the rum cover over to Crepo. The truth be told, and it will be one thing that come in your face tomorrow, with Crepo to move and sign on an amendment to this bill for the rum cover over for the VI, right? And here it is to the representative for Puerto Rico. We got our delegate to sign on. They're Republicans, got a delegate to sign on this. So Puerto Rico is the lead in this whole thing, right? But my team jump in because in the rum cover over, not one Democrat, not one supported the rum cover over that we're bragging about that we bring to this territory. Under the state of emergency, that 24 billion, the only responsible entity in that is through the public worksheets. The first $8 billion that came into this territory came from the previous president, who was Trump at the time, through Governor Mapp. And through that, it was for them to do what you call the public worksheets, coming in and assess the property. And whatever is found later, then the numbers would increase. One person who doesn't vote on the floor created and brought that sort of money to this territory. And then you're going to say, since BI Housing Finance Authority now is in a problem, let's move the funds somewhere else. Who we talking to? The investigation is going on corruption. You said move the funds somewhere else. Just the misinformation. That's why I spoke about civics in our school, because we don't have a say. It is under the Emergency Management FEMA Authority, not a congressional act. So I want to thank you for the evening. I hope I've done you justice and the listening audience the best I can. Don't count this independent out, because this independent has always been in here fighting for you. And every single thing you see taking place here today, this independent sacrificed himself on the other side of the aisle to make sure that it's copacetic, it's transparent, and we have what you call tenacity and prudency for you, because I cover your name, not your shame. in every single way I can while they allow for it to manifest. It's going to be great debates. Fast track. I love my home. That's why I work for free. That's why for these years, I've spent the time out there working the way I've been. Not a penny, not a dime I've taken from any entity to provide any services on your behalf. We've been paying them for how much years now? And what we have. We have the same issue that they talk about that now is a discussion of, okay, so what? Nobody's speaking about it. The issue is still there. We got to address the issue. The elephant in the room is not being spoken about. That will haunt you tomorrow. My warning to the people of the Virgin Islands going forward, if we don't take this bull by the horn and just defend yourself from the sound bites, it sound good. The jam and wine, all sound good. But you jamming and whining in your house when you're paying WAPA? I would wonder. You jamming in your home, those of you on the SNAP program that have an issue, I doubt that. Those of you impacted by the SNAP program, I doubt that. Section 8, I doubt that. And I could keep going on to the variables of other agencies that begin to fall into place as far as what's happening to you in your home, or retirees, or seniors, medically in our schools. Our children are suffering, but yes, we're saying it's okay. Which world we living in? Today is a day of reckoning. The wind of change is here. The prevailing wind from North Shore, Point Judal, to every end and back of this entire territory. It's our fight. It is your fight, and we will see it to the end. I wish you God's speed, God's blessing in abundance, and He is our shield and armor. And I say blessings to everyone tonight. And thank you, hostesses, for your evening and your questions. And for those who commented and suggested or asked or queried of me, stay tuned. This has just begun.
Woo! Powerful, powerful words. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Just tell the people, because Ronald wants to know, what ways can your supporters help you the best at this time? They wanna support.
I want to thank those who want to support. Follow us on our page, read it and see what's happening, and we will guide you and direct you through that process. And I thank you for even offering, because in fact, at one point or the other, we can't turn that blind eye like has been before. We are in a quagmire, ladies and gentlemen. And I am at the front, I'm in the seat, I'm in the driver's seat as well to see what's happening and know what's going on. And all you got to do is fact check me. It was a lie in 2019, but today there's no turning back, because we're not going to meet the deadline required by the government company office. And that's going to be a detriment to this territory tomorrow. Not one I want, but it's one that we've created.
Nisi, I know it's a hard act to follow, but you got any final words for the audience? I'm sorry.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, for taking the time, for being clear, transparent, open, and willing to not only educate us, but also to inform us of things that we might not even be aware transpires in the background of certain situations. I think it was very informative for me specifically as well. I appreciate your willing to do so. And we look forward to seeing, what your platform puts out, how your future debates go, and as well as hopefully your success in this gubernatorial run.
And I thank you.
Listen, thank you so much. This has been an amazing interview. We appreciate your candor. We appreciate you just talking straightforward and directly to the people that wanted to hear what you had to say, because clearly by the comments and all of the input and the engagement, they were looking out for what Mr. Benta had to say tonight. So thank you so much. It was no political speak, no, double speak or any of that. So we really appreciate that. This has been a great episode. Thank you, the Benta Potter team. You've made believers out of us. We'll be watching.
Thank you.
Good luck on
I
the
wish you
campaign
guys Godspeed.
on the 13th for sure. That's it for me. Y'all have a good rest of your evening. Go ahead and share the live. Tell people about this episode to tap in and watch it. It's on our YouTube. It's on our Facebook page. You could go ahead and check it out and watch a recap if you just joined. You won't want to miss any bits of this. Go ahead and tap in. All right. Thank you. Everybody. Good night. We love
Good
you.
night.
We out.
Good night. Mhm.